with community that is just as large. So that is what we are doing. There are many ways for us to come together, but the easiest one is locally, just talking to each other. That's what we need to do. Just speak. Understand that there's not 1,000 different issues going on in the country. There's one issue. It's greed. It's greed from the people up top. And that is what we are pushing back against. We are pushing back against their greed. Because what this is a pressure campaign. Because they've ratcheted up the pressure on us for a long, long time. And it's time we ratchet up the pressure right back. But just ratcheting up the pressure isn't going to solve all the issues. Because we have to show other people what this community that we are building looks like. And that's the difficulty. It's the chicken and the egg, right? We know that everybody would choose to have community-based living if they knew what it was all about. But the community-based living has been propagandized against for so many decades that so many people vote against their own interests. And that's exactly what we are pushing back against. It's to realize that right now the system we are in is not capitalism. It's corporatism, if anything. Because the corporations, there are a ton of successful corporations, but not a lot of successful employees. So let's ask ourselves, what happens when there's not a lot of successful employees in a country? Well, people don't have money, right? And then what's what the bosses always says? Well, money doesn't buy happiness. Well, I wish we could say one thing right back to the boss, but it does buy security. That's all that any human being on the planet wants is security, food, and housing, maybe a little bit of health care so that you can enjoy that nice life. And when we don't have security, all we do is going around thinking about security. If you don't have food or housing, the only things you think about are how you get food or housing. So when you have a whole bunch of people afraid, about 80% of us don't have any security, well, then you're going to be living in fear. In fear that your car will break down. In fear that you take one wrong step and get into medical debt. Because medical debt is the number one reason for bankruptcy in this country. And when you have a whole entire population of people living in fear, they're going to be easy to divide. Sound like a country anybody's been living in recently? A bunch of people only looking out for themselves, afraid and easy to divide? So how do we get here? Because all we're asking for is our fair share, right? That's all we're asking for. Enough for food and housing. Because if we don't get our fair share, if we're working for a successful employee and we don't get our fair share, let's think what happens. Well, those people who are working for a successful company, and remember, we said there's a lot of successful companies in America, just not a lot of successful employees. Well, those employees have to go without food or housing, even though they are the ones that are making that company successful. How can the employees both be lazy and also be employees of an incredibly successful company? It's got to be one or the other, right? Because we see the proof. The proof is in the profit. And when somebody doesn't have enough money for food or housing, let's really think and ask ourselves what happens. They either suffer, even though they're working for a company that's profiting. And let's talk about wow, that is such a great idea. That's what we've got working towards. Let's talk about who we're actually talking about. Corporations that profit in the hundreds of millions or billions of dollars. This is not about small businesses. Unified Mind, one of the best ways we could fix this would be open up businesses' books to people so that when they come in, they say, hey, this job that you're coming in for, it generally brings us in $50 an hour, $60 an hour, $80 an hour. And then when you go and get paid $12 an hour for that job, you're going to be like, oh, what? but you're making $80 an hour. And maybe they could say, all right, well, the profit margin on that is X amount and da-da-da-da. And still you'd be negotiating from a place of knowledge. Anyway, so what ends up happening is that employers purposely underpay their employees because they're greedy. Because they know that if they underpay their employees won't revolt against them because they don't have food or housing. What they'll do is they'll go on public assistance, and then we all have to pay for it. And the public good is there in case of emergency, not so that the rich can get richer. So now I'll talk about how we got here. Well, what they did was they got rid of all the competition. The hallmark of a capitalistic society is freedom of choice, a free market. So what they did, started in the 70s and 80s, was they made sure that it wasn't quite free, that it was always skewed towards the people at the top so that the rich kept getting richer. And that's been what's happening for the last 40 or 50 years. There are no mom and pop shops that can compete with corporations. I've seen one small general store in my life. And that could not compete with Walmart, Target. Same goes for hardware stores, grocery stores, banks, newspapers, pharmacies, literally anything. So they got rid of all the competition. 88% of companies on the S&P 500 have the same two majority shareholders. I'll repeat it again. If you think we live in a free market, then why do 88% of the companies on the S&P 500 have the same two majority shareholders? And then, so it used to be we had a free market, we had freedom of competition that protected us. And then what did we have? Oh yeah, politicians were supposed to have a backbone too. Forgot about that one. That's who I really blame. Because they're only in power because of us. They were supposed to be the bulwarks of society, the one who did not allow their human nature to seep in. But they did, because it's greed. It's always greed. So we've got two problems, y'all. Free market is gone, and the politicians only are the middle managers now. If you don't think that politicians are only there so we don't yell at the billionaires, that's where when I see people going hard for either side, left or right, it's like, yo, they just want us pointing fingers. Both parties are two sides of the same coin, and that coin is in a billionaire's pocket. It's good cop, bad cop, y'all. We all have our good cops, and trust me, we have our opinion on, the good cop can do better things sometimes. But they both work for the same corrupt department. And when everybody says that it's still left versus right, it's funny. So once again, though, what you're doing there, Murden, is you're just dividing people for no reason. If you had to get half the country to start walking 1 mile a day to save your life, how would you do it? Would you go on in and tell people, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong? Well, they're not called that. They're not this or that. And then there it is. The people, this is my favorite part. Usually I feel like a little bit older, but they don't say there's not a problem. They say, we can't fix it. Man, isn't that sad? Now, first of all, isn't it like kind of fun to fix a hard problem? Isn't it kind of fun to fix a hard problem when you have a bunch of your friends there with you too? And then what if that problem saved your family's life? And do you really think speaking like that, Merlin, will get people on your side? Because we probably have a lot of the same thoughts. But what I'm trying to do is to stop people from plugging their ears. That's the most important part of all this. So the second part I didn't finish to figure it out was that after they got rid of the competition, after they bought all the politicians, they also control all the narrative. They own all the media companies. So what they do is they say one thing over here and one thing over here. And then both sides comes in and goes, it's not us, it's them. It's not them, it's us. Oh, left versus right is up. And it's no, what you're doing is you're falling into the trap that they have laid for us. Because anytime, no matter how righteous you think you are, anytime we point fingers left or right, it only serves the people up top. So that's where we need to just get rid of any of the left or right and just talk to regular Americans. That's really what's going to solve this the quickest. Community coming together. And what's so funny is when people come on in and, wonder about things. Well, we got, it's not like we're not starting somewhere. We have over 250 people signing up every single day. If there is a clear difference in ideology, then why is it that no matter who is in charge, the people up top get richer? The rich get richer. So what you're saying is you are literally falling into the same exact ideological trap that keeps all of us here. Because what we actually have is we are all pushing on the wheel of progress forward together. There are a bunch of people that have been propagandized against to push back against that wheel of progress on us. And I'm telling you, the way that we speak to those people who are pushing against the wheel of progress is just as important as how hard we push against that wheel. And then y'all are coming in here going, nope, they're the problem. And we're going to tell them they're the problem too. Do you think they're going to listen to you? Let's go back. If you had to get somebody to start working out to save your life, to save your family's life, how would you go about that? Would you tell the person that they're just doing it wrong? No. Would you tell them that you're going to historical figure them? No. Because what are they going to do? Are they going to listen to you? Or are they just going to go like this? Screw that person. They don't know what they're talking about. That doesn't fit my worldview. So if they just come over here and just beat me on the head with the truth, then they're not going to listen. You have to get people to think critically. That's the whole part. That's all we're trying to do, is get people to see, okay, so if I had more money, I'd have more security. If I had more money and security, I probably wouldn't be so angry about all these little problems that the people up top are telling me to fight with other Americans about. And if I wasn't so angry that I was fighting with other Americans and I was so divided, maybe we'd be able to figure some of this stuff out. Or maybe we need to get all these fires in this country out of here. But how can we put out a fire if the people that control everything have the flamethrowers? So we need to get on the same page first and realize that things are only so bad because the people up top make money off of the problems continuing to happen. And the more that we point fingers either at the right or at the left, the more that we point fingers at everyday Americans, things won't change. What we have to do is shake hands with everyday Americans. Not break down politics, but break bread together. And it's not about left or right. Because when the left is in power, the billionaires still get richer. We're not like all of us. It wasn't like from 2020 to 2024 that all of us could go buy homes, that all of our wages went up so that we were only working 40 hours a week. You spam one more time, I'm going to mute you. I am here to talk and say what needs to be said. Not, I don't know, not here for your amusement. And that's what's so funny is when people come in and they push against this, it's like you just sat here for 34 minutes listening to me talk. And at any point, if your life was as good as you said it was, wouldn't you just be like, oh, this person's crazy? Because here's a great example. I see the flat earthers and it pops up there and it goes, oh, debate me. Well, when I see a flat earther, I don't stay there and I'm like, oh, let me show this guy what's wrong. Like Tony Mitty over here. You go, nope, that's ridiculous. I'm moving on. But that's what's so funny is people stay in here and they push back and they push back and they push back. And I'm just like, y'all, if your life was really that good, why would you sit in here? Wouldn't you just be like, this is like the flat earthers. I'm just going to move on because this is ridiculous. But it's not. I'm hitting you at your core because you are at work right now, most likely, getting paid probably between $15, $20, $30 an hour. And then that boss that you're working for, who hasn't been to the job in 6 or 8 months, they're making 10, 20, 100 times. So once again, it's the way that we speak. It's corporations and billionaires and politicians. Why does it matter so much? You can say it how you want, but the way that you speak about it is really important. Well then, Merton, I don't think you need to be a part of our group, because if you don't want to talk to anybody and you're just going to call names and point fingers, you are only helping the people up top. All right, and you are out of here. We know what you're doing, and we do not like it. Such fools. Still like trying to just point fingers left or right. It's so weird. They will point that because we have been trained to point the finger at anybody, except for the corporations, except for the billionaires. That's really what has happened. So people come in thinking they're all clever because they think that it's their specific group that is the problem. I figured it out. These people are the problem. I know, that's where I got rid of them. We know what they're doing. And that's where it's just sad and silly, to be honest. So if you are a real person and you believe in this, we are doing shit about it. It starts off with free stickers because we have to get on the same page. We have to get on the same page. People are the problem because we have the people who are the billionaires and the corporate owners. Even though they used our hard work, they relied on us to make more money. They decided to not pay us enough for our fair share. Now, why is it everybody's problem when somebody is working for a successful company and they don't make their fair share? Well, they can't afford food and housing. And if somebody can't afford food or housing, guess who pays for it? We all do, through our taxes. And the public good is there in case of emergency, not so the rich can get richer. That's it. That is what we are pushing back against. And there used to be a free market that protected us. We used to have politicians with spines that protected us. And now we have none of those things. So we need to stand up and protect ourselves, because those politicians that are supposed to be working for us, they only have that power because we allow them to have it. They are only the middle managers, the billionaires, the corporations are the ones screwing us all over. If we had more money, people would be less divided because we'd have security. If we had security, we'd be able to build a community. And if we built a community, we'd be able to come together to push back on this rigged system. But right now, they don't pay us any money, so we're in fear of financial ruin, so we don't have any security. And because we don't have any security, we're living in fear. And if we're living in fear, we are easy to divide. And there will always be people coming in and, you know, it's so funny because I call them out so much, you'd think they'd stop, that are always, you know, oh, Mr. Billionaire, we love you so much. Old Vortex over here coming in, simping for the billionaires. But let's just break it down real quick. It's not that hard. So I'm a business owner myself. When I wanted to go open my second location, what did I have to go do? I had to go hire employees. And then because I couldn't be in two places at once, I had to, what was that word? Oh yeah, rely on my employees to make money at that second location because I couldn't be somewhere else. So let's extrapolate this to multinational corporations. And then if these multinational corporations are hitting record profits every single quarter, the one I will call out right now, Cisco Systems, just declared record profits again. And what did they do? They had massive layoffs. We build the companies, they take the money. Why do I say that? Because without us, there wouldn't be any money being made. And then what do people say next? They go, oh, well, the boss has the right to pay them whatever they want. Okay. But when somebody doesn't have enough money for food and housing, so they are making that boss, remember, this is for companies that profit in the hundreds of millions or billions of dollars. So if somebody who's an owner is profiting billions of dollars, they have more than they need. But what they're doing is their greed tells them to keep taking more from their employees to put in their pocket. And now normally the employees would revolt or they wouldn't work there. But what those employees do is they go on public assistance and then we all pay for it. And they know because they own all the media companies and because they have people like Vortex on their side, all they have to do is keep pumping out the propaganda, keep telling us the lies, that it's the people who are lazy that are the problem. But here is my question. If so many American workers are lazy, then why do we have so many damn successful corporations? Wouldn't it be those lazy workers would be the ones working there? Because 73% of jobs in America are corporate jobs. And then 80% of Americans don't have any security. Those things kind of line up. And then people will say, oh, without the business owner, there wouldn't be a business. Yes, but same goes for the employees. When you go to open up a second location, I know this from experience, you cannot be in two places at once. If I did not have employees, I would not be able to open up my second location. I would not be able to be sitting here right now with all of our offices open. So I rely on them. And here's what I could do. They make a really good salary. And what I could do is I could cut their salary by $20, $25 an hour. And I would pocket that per employee per hour. But guess what would happen? Each of those employees would go on government assistance, which you all pay for. So you'd be paying higher taxes simply because I wanted to put more money in my pocket. That is happening on a massive scale throughout all multinational corporations. If you don't believe me, two companies, BlackRock and Vanguard, are the major shareholders in 88% of companies. So said another way, 88% of companies on the S&P 500 have the same two majority shareholders. No, they cannot get another job because 88%, so 73% of jobs in America are corporate jobs. If you really think that the 20-some% of Americans who have nice small business jobs that provide them security are leaving them for one of these corporate jobs, no. So people are stuck. And what they do is they pay us, this is a good question because it is difficult. They pay us just enough to survive. And if you're just enough to survive, well, you're not going to complain too much because if you complain, maybe they'll stop paying you just enough to survive and they'll get rid of you. Or if you need to go out and take an interview, usually you have to take time off of work. Well, what if you can't miss out on $100 that week? What if you can't miss out on that money to take off, to take that interview, to find another job? Heck, let's go even further. What if you stopped going to school at 18 because you needed to go work for your family because your family didn't make enough money? Well, you never acquired the skills to be able to go out and find another job because you were shoved into the market at the prime time that you should have been educating yourself as well. So that's where throughout the rigged system, there are always advantages that we don't see. So the people that say, oh, why couldn't they just get another job? Well, if you've got the advantage of being able to take off and still afford everything, if you have the advantage of getting an education to learn a new skill, well, that's where, Eric, I think about people like y'all all the time because it's like, even if you come from so this was my exact scenario. One of my best friends in high school lived a nice middle-class life. The dad one day